Hello and welcome to another edition of Business Africa. I am Afolake Oyinloye. Coming up, Senegal's national revenue is in surplus with over 560 billion CFA franc. Kenyan farmers venture into macadamia nuts as demand surge abroad. And in the Republic of Benin, Zem Express app is bringing dynamism to motor taxi business. Recent statistics released by the Senegalese Office of Economic Planning, Policies and Finance reveal the national revenue is in surplus with over 560 billion francs CFA. This figure doesn't, however, reflect the current defects of the economy, whose current GDP deficit is projected this year at 7% against the 5.7% last year. Let's find out the reasons from this report from our newsroom.
Senegal's economy has shown resilience to the current economic crisis that has affected several states within Africa. The oil-producing West African state has recorded an increase in the national revenue. According to the recent statistic by the General Director of Planning, Economic Policies and Finance, the national revenue had an additional revenue amounting to 566.3 billion CFA francs after placing Eurobond worth $1.1 this year. The country's economic focus is expected to remain robust after 6% and inflation to be contained at 2% in 2017. However, public debt has continued to rise and debt service is expected to increase from 24% of revenue in 2014 to 30% in 2017. The International Monetary Fund had approved a $19 million loan to the West African nation of Senegal after completing a first review of progress under its Poverty Reduction and Growth Facility. Senegal is considered to be one of the most stable democracies in West Africa, but its economic growth has lagged behind in the continent as a whole for much of the last 10 years. The government launched a plan in early 2014 intended to spur GDP growth and boost development. The program aims for 7.1% growth every year until 2018.
Professor Sheriff Salif C is the specialist on economic matters, is joining us from Dakar, Senegal. Welcome to the program. Now, what do you make of these figures published by the Senegalese Office in charge of Economic Planning, Finance and Policies?
The impression has been the same for the past 4 years, not only for Senegal, but also for the African countries, which are slowing after a period of deleveraging due to debt relief policies. This is of concern to international institutions. But here at the local level, the assertion is the same. The country should be careful. Senegal borrows a little too much. Right or wrong, this is what is said in the business community and in non-political society.
But how then can we explain this current economic deficit?
This is not a peculiar case for Senegal. In an election year, countries need to spend a little more. 2017 was a great election year. These were legislative elections. But it was in any case a referendum against the President of the Republic. In the presidential camp, significant expenses have been incurred. First of all, they are the expenses of the state to organize the elections. You know that elections are expensive. There are two very important items of expenditure that have been addressed externally. There's the creation of new identity cards, which have cost, according to what has been said, about 50 billion. There are also colossal expenses for the organization of the legislative elections with 47 lists. You can imagine what that implies as an expense in terms of printing. But that's traditional. It was known in 2011 before the 2012 presidential election. This was the year. I would add that there are also expenses related to the Senegal emergency plan. The government wants an acceleration to implement projects and programs. This also pushed countries to get into debt at the most. And I believe that this debt will continue in 2018 because, indeed, when there is a deficit of this type in general, a current account deficit, in countries such as ours, by external indebtedness, that is strengthening.
So what's the way forward for Senegal's economy at this point in time?
I'd like us to stay on the course to avoid replenishing the stock of external debts. Good public finances are necessary to avoid penalizing local businesses. The report that you've just read speaks of transfer in the other direction. Companies that are settled, transferring income, repatriating them. When the investment of the national or local private sector is not so important and the partner companies repatriate their income, that is quite worrying. To stay the course and clean up, and avoid being unable to pay domestic debt to local businesses. Because if the state cannot pay the debt to the local companies, in a country where the most important need is job creation, it will bring difficulties in addition to those we already have. So staying the course means thinking about cleaning up the macroeconomic and financial environment and paying attention to debt management anyway. Even if the government says there's no danger yet, I think there are a lot of people here, and we need to pay attention to that.
Well, thank you for your input.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll be heading to Kenya, where farmers crack into macadamia nut demand abroad. More right after this break.